This video is, frankly, a bit of a surprise. While building a new Soviet force, I realised I've never built any Battlefront T-34s, but now I need some. As I was building them, I realised these were a great example of how Battlefront plastic has changed and evolved over the years. So stay with me as we have a look at Battlefront's plastic T-34. My T-34s come from the Nikolai's Steel Wall box set from Enemy at the Gates, but Battlefront T-34s are available in quite a few box sets. SBX 54 and SBX 66 T-34 Tank Company boxes are for mid-war and late-war respectively. The mid-war box can build 5 T-34-76 early and mid variants, or T-34-85s. The late war box makes either T-34-76 Model 1943s or T-34-85s. There's also some Army deals with T-34s as well, including a T-34 Tank Battalion box containing 21 T-34s. T-34 was the mainstay of the Red Army throughout the war. Its lineage grew from the BT-7 fast tank through the A-20 prototype and on through the war and beyond, being continually developed and upgunned. I've done a full history section on my old Nikolai's Steel Wall review, so check that out if you want more details. Let's look at the plastic. My T-34s come on 3 sprues of green plastic. One sprue has the upper and lower hull, as well as turrets for the 76mm Model 1943 and the T-34-85. The turret for the early T-34 is on the separate small sprue here. This is only available in some sets to build the Model 1941. The other sprue is an accessory sprue. I think this was designed originally to provide plastic detail parts for resin kits. It has different guns, hatches, fuel drums, stowage boxes, and the one-piece tracks. Starting with the Model 1941 turret, there's just 2 pieces here, the upper and lower turret. This allows you to build the early T-34-76, armed with the F-34 76mm gun. This replaced the L-11 gun of the Model 1940. This variant featured a small 2-man turret where the commander also acted as loader. To complete the turret, you'll need the gun, mantlet and one-piece hatch found on the accessory sprue. This turret sprue is a 2018 design. Have a look at the nice thin sprue gates where they connect to the parts. Keep that in mind for later. This is BM12, the T-34 accessory sprue. I believe this 2012 sprue was designed to add plastic parts to resin kits back in the days before full injection moulded plastic kits were common. It has parts for T-34 tanks, plus SP guns on the T-34 chassis, like the Su-85 and Su-100. You can see it has some one-piece plastic tracks, plus guns, hatches, stowage and other parts. The tracks are okay, but detail is maybe a little soft, more like the level of detail on contemporary metal parts. The road wheels are the early rubber-rimmed dished style, not really suitable for later variants. Spoked all-steel wheels were introduced in 1942 to conserve rubber. Then spoked rubber-rimmed wheels as Lend-Lease rubber became available in 1943. It was common to see a mix of road wheels, with rubber-rimmed wheels common near the idler and drive sprocket. There is a suggestion of track detail on the upper portions of the run, but the lower sections are simple blank bars. The other frame on this sprue has a mix of parts. From left to right there are 4 different guns, hatches and cupola, spare track, stowage boxes, fuel drums, square and rounded fenders, the early 76mm mantlet and turret hatch, and finally some early pattern square external fuel tanks. The rounded fenders are for wartime tanks, with the square versions forming part of a post-war refit program. You'll find square fenders on T-34s in Korea, Vietnam and the Middle East. The smallest gun here is the F-34 76mm gun for the T-34 76. Above that is the 57mm gun. 10 T-34s were armed with the ZIS-4 57mm gun in 1941, all lost in the fighting around Moscow. This barrel can be cut down to kit bash a second 76mm barrel to produce the missing part you need to complete all 3 turrets in this kit. The largest barrel is the D10S 100mm gun for the Su-100 tank destroyer. We don't need that, but we do need the ZIS S53 85mm gun for the T-34 85. Note the very thick sprue gates on the parts here. This marks this as a very early plastic design from Battlefront, and combined with a slightly brittle styrene makes parts cleanup difficult. There's a lot of trimming and shaping needed, and the brittle plastic can tear when cut, even with cutters. Some parts, like the hull machine gun, are almost impossible to cut free without bending or damage. Battlefront plastics have come a long way, and seeing this older sprue brought back memories of the trials and difficulties of those early days. The last sprue is also an oldie. This one dates from 2013. It has the hull parts, the model 1943 76mm turret, the T-34 85 turret, and some hatches. This also has thick sprue attachment points with the same difficulties in cutting and cleanup, especially on the curved portions of the turrets. Designing the exhausts, hull machine gun mounts and fenders as separate parts is also an unlikely approach in a more modern kit, adding to the complexity of this build. The larger turret is the T-34 85. There are 2 domed ventilation vents and a couple of sights moulded on here, plus there's holes for hatches. One should be a cupola and the other a simple flat hatch. They're both included on this sprue. Check out the attachment points inside the gun mantlet here. Their placement means any blemishes will be hidden behind the mantlet, but they are a challenge to cut and clean up. This is the mantlet for the 85mm gun you use with this turret. The exhaust pipes for the hull are here too, as is the open cupola hatch. The smaller turret is the hexagonal turret design introduced with the T-34 model 1943. The twin round hatches on this turret sparked the nickname Mickey Mouse. However, visibility was limited when buttoned up, and later production turrets of this type received a new commander's cupola. You get enough parts to make either variant. There's also a single domed ventilator and a periscope sight moulded on. The mantlet for this turret has prominent cheeks and mounts the 76mm gun. Next to that you can see the later hull machine gun on the right, as well as the optional flamethrower fitting to make the OT-34 flamethrower tank. The sprue gates here mean cutting the machine gun free without bending it is pretty much impossible. Do your best. The closed version of the cupola and the simple round hatch are nearby. Use these, but don't forget there are other ones on the accessory sprue if you want to make all 3 turrets. Here's the upper hull. On the glasses there's the driver's hatch, moulded closed, and a square mounting hole for the hull machine gun. The rear plate has some nice bolts as well as the circular transmission access hatch. There's also tools and stowage boxes moulded on. Some of the engine grille detail is maybe a little more shallow than modern Battlefront kits, and other details seem a little simplified, but still good enough to get a good finished product. The lower hull has keying for the tracks. Interestingly, the side with a single key slot allows a lot of play during positioning, but the upper hull sorts that out. So those are the parts for Battlefront's 15mm plastic T-34 kit. This is still a good kit, but building this really showed me how far we'd come, both with the hobby and Battlefront's experience with plastic moulding. This is more challenging to build, and is a nostalgic echo of the transition from resin and metal to plastic. It was an exciting time to be a wargamer, and we had no idea where it was going to take us. The hybrid plastics, thick sprue gates and high parts counts were all necessary steps to get us where we are with plastics today. As a reviewer, it can be my job to point out flaws and shortcomings, and sometimes you lose sight of the fact that these kits are overall really great. Battlefront generally does a good job, And looking back at a kit like this can give us some much needed perspective on how good they are and how far they've come. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this little nostalgia trip. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to maybe see some War Diary videos of me building my mid-war Soviets, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.